hard and fun don't have to be, again, mutually exclusive.
This is Alchemy Social, and I'm Sujean. Today we sit down with Avante Price, the 24-year-old CEO and co-founder of Posh, the events platform powering the future of real-life connection. On the surface, Avante's story is the stuff of Silicon Valley legend. College dropout launches successful tech company. Posh has already transacted more than $200 million in ticket sales. But Avante is rewriting the script. Instead of keeping us online, he and his co-founder Eli have built a social media platform that's actually stopping the scroll and getting users to connect in person. As a student at NYU, Avante turned to DJing as his creative outlet, but became frustrated with the lack of tools to create better events. He teamed up with Eli, and together they're building Posh. We dive into his deeper mission.
I think it is something that's, a little bit dark. I don't want anyone to feel how I felt when I was a kid, right?
I hope you enjoy this conversation, and let's stay connected, so subscribe for updates. Hi, Avante.
Hi.
I am very excited for our conversation because you have started a company that has had explosive growth over the last few years. But even more impressive to me than that is a quote that I want to read, which you will recognize, I'm sure. Think about your last week. What was the most meaningful moment? It probably involves spending time with people you care about, a powerful experience amid the monotony of daily life. If we can help our generation find a profound sense of belonging, we can reshape the world in unimaginable ways. Wow.
Thanks.
And as a reminder,
Can't even believe that I said that.
That was you. You were quoted in a Forbes article that came out July 2024. I truly got goosebumps when I read this because the message, I think, is so resonant for me personally, and it seems to you and you on behalf of your generation. Why do you care about bringing people together in person?
It's a great question. Well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for having me. I think it is something that's, a little bit dark, but I think a lot of the most motivated founders and people in the world are motivated by a chip on their shoulder, right? And I think for me, in childhood, I was candidly very, very lonely, right? Had autism, Asperger's specifically, and, I was always the kid who didn't have a friend group. I was always bouncing between lunch tables. And I also moved a lot. My parents loved to travel and move, which in turn meant every 2 or 3 years I had to make new friends, which I already wasn't great at, right? And so I grew up until college, really, even in high school, relatively lonely, maybe always had 1 or 2 close-ish friends, but you know how kids can get if you're also kind of an outcast. Even your closer friends don't really want to publicly affiliate themselves with you and things. So even those friends that felt close kind of were a little fake in public scenarios. And so, I always had this skill of DJing, and I finally learned in the end of high school, early college, that DJing was a cool way that I could involve myself in social scenarios and candidly not have to speak to people, right? And just be part of the moment and enjoy the value and feel like I personally belonged, but the awkward side of me didn't have to be exposed because I was just playing music. And as long as I played good music, people liked me, and my personality was almost, evoked through the music I was playing. And but I think once I got into DJing more seriously in college, and started hosting events more and really getting involved in the event space, and people started to respect me, and I, also came out of my shell and was able to become a little bit more social, right? I think I really found the value of belonging, and then I just thought back to my childhood and, my current motivator, and I think a motivator that will live with me for a long time is just like, I don't want anyone to feel how I felt when I was a kid, right? And I think that through technology, through a bunch of other things, through the people that we empower through our ecosystem and our products, like we can help more people who are still lonely, even in adulthood, right? Belong a little bit to people that are just like them.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm sure that resonates to so many people, so many listeners. Definitely resonates with me. I was not the most outgoing person until probably college. I think that there are experiences that you have, though, that are personal experiences. It's a whole nother game, though, to take that issue or that challenge that you had and turn it into a company. And I know that growing up your parents were not necessarily entrepreneurs. They were in academia and education. You had never done tech before. Why do you think you were able to channel that interest into a company and specifically a tech company?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is though my parents weren't necessarily entrepreneurs in the sense that we think about, they were English teachers, but they were freelancers. So they still had to build their own book of business. And, that was very hard. They didn't make a lot of money at all. They still don't, right? But I think they did teach me that, like, what they would always say to me is, listen, you don't have the life that your friends have because we chose a life of freedom, right? And they would act as if they were almost martyrs, like we're making less money by choice. Obviously, we know today, like with people even like myself, that you can get freedom and make a lot more cash and a lot more impact on the world. Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? But their belief was like, look, we're building our own lives and our own path, and that's okay that we make less money because at least we don't have a 9-to-5 or anyone we answer to. And so I think I took that early learning. Even from an early age, I had a lemonade stand when I was a kid because they told me they couldn't afford to buy me a Nintendo DS. And so I said, well, I'm going to do what you did, right? And develop my own freedom. But I do think they did give me that early inkling of like, if you want something, the best way to go get it is yourself, right? Rather than relying on someone else to promote you or working in some scenario, et cetera. I think as I got older, obviously like the motivation came more internally and the success I had at an early age, even starting my first company in high school, gave me the confidence that like this was truly possible and that freedom and impact / returns were not mutually exclusive.
Wow. When you were a student is when this idea struck you and your friend, your co-founder, Eli. And at the time you were DJing. Walk me through the transition of student to DJ to company founder.
Yeah, I mean, I think taking it a step back, like Eli and myself both had worked on our own startups in the past. Mine was like a TaskRabbit competitor, but you could hire only local high schoolers. So the idea was basically like me and my friends in high school were like wrestlers and football players, et cetera, and we could never get like a job and make side income because they all required set hours. And you also couldn't participate in the gig economy because Uber or DoorDash, et cetera, require you to be 18 plus. And so our idea was like, how do you help those who have busy schedules in high school make some side money and not make, $8 an hour bagging groceries at the time, like the minimum wage, right? It sucked. It's like, hey, this is more fun. You can do odd jobs. And then on the flip side, like adults in the neighborhood didn't necessarily want like TaskRabbit, like stranger adults coming to their place, but a local high schooler was a lot more palatable, right? So anywho, that worked. It had some issues with, high schoolers aren't that reliable. So they wouldn't show up sometimes. And there'd be weird incongruencies. But overall, it was a cool learning experience that gave me that confidence. And similarly, Eli had another company that he started in high school that was basically like a student teacher trading card game to build rapport between students and teachers by collecting trading cards of their teachers based on trivia facts about them. And so we both had this confidence. Eli was a photographer. I was a DJ. We both met through events we were working on together. And so I think what was interesting was that we met through this like hobby and more passion of ours, but we both had very similar professional backgrounds, right? And confidence that like we also started startups before separately. We both had co-founders, but they weren't each other. And so like, what could we do together, right? And also our skill sets were just so different that we had this perfect yin yang that they say you always should have in a co-founder, right? Where, he's a creative. He was a photographer. He could make any flyer, make any video. He really could create anything that he could think of. But simultaneously, right, he was a great programmer, self-taught, and could, build any MVP of any product we could think of. And simultaneously, I had a bunch of sales and go-to-market and operational and finance experience that he didn't have, right? And so we were able to play off of each other very, very well in the beginning. That I think just like, it candidly was like a matter of time, place, and just like luck, right? I don't think that there is like any magic, answer to these things, but it was very lucky.
Yeah. So great. So lucky. And also, I mean, you clearly have made it work, put the work into making it work. What was the most unexpectedly difficult thing? So you, by this time, I mean, it's crazy to say, but you were already a serial entrepreneur by the time you were in your early 20s. For Posh in particular, did it feel different? Did it feel harder, easier?
That's interesting. I think how it works, I talked to a few serial entrepreneurs, like it's always easier up until the point that you got to last. It's kind of like when you're playing a video game and you like die at a certain like level or high score, right? And then it's like, it feels relatively easy to get back to that high score, but everything after that is like the unknown, right? And which is like really, really difficult. So yeah, I think like the first 6 months was relatively easy and fun. Like, oh, I've done this before. So did Eli, right? Like, but as soon as you get to, 100,000 users or something like that and things you haven't experienced, then obviously you have to be really, really willing and able to learn really quickly, right? And you have to have like what we call like high slope, right? Like your ability to learn and become, a better version of yourself really quickly, right? And the higher your slope, like the faster you learn effectively. And if you don't have high slope, not even just being a founder, just working at like a early stage startup, I think that you break down very quickly because the organization becomes a different iteration of itself, right? It becomes twice as big, the problems become different, and if what you know and how you approach those problems does not evolve, then they will outscale you very quickly, right? And it becomes very hard to keep up.
Yeah, like the wheels fall off and it just goes. Yeah. How are you managing that?
I think it's fun personally. I think hard and fun don't have to be, again, mutually exclusive. Like I think it's definitely harder and it only gets harder, and that's what everyone says, right? Like it only gets harder and harder and harder. I think also you become less of a builder and more of like a politician and like people person as things scale, because there's more people solving all the problems and it's your job to manage the people, not the problems, right? And I think that's just a different problem. But I think personally, like I enjoy it, right? So I think if you don't enjoy spending like every waking moment thinking about, your company, if you're a founder, like you're probably not gonna make it, to be honest.
Yeah. Yes. Actually, on that exact note, I am so curious. So what is the favorite part of your days these days? Just at least when you think about building your company, is there a certain activity? Is there a certain, part of the team? Is it kind of the macro just building?
Yeah, I think it's different depending on the day. I think what excites me the most is seeing everyone across the teams contribute to the same goals, right? And seeing like the symbiotic nature of the entire organization kind of coming together around like 2 to 3 objectives. So like we operate against like the OKR framework, right? Which some people are against, some people are for, right? Yeah. I'm always, maybe we won't in a year or two, who knows? But right now we do, and it works a lot for us because what we do is we create only 2 to 3 company-wide objectives every quarter. Very simple. We'll never do more than like 3. And then every team has their own OKRs of like 3 to 5 objectives, right? A little bit bigger, but those must feed the 2 to 3 company objectives, right? And if you can't paint a straight line of how your objectives contribute to those goals, then obviously like you're executing against the wrong goals, right? And so by operating this way, you see that people that on teams that usually wouldn't interact in most organizations, right? Like a engineer and a community person, right? Or a salesperson and a marketing person, whatever it might be, they coordinate more, but you get the point, right? These people interact because they actually realize they have shared goals rather than feeling like they're all running in 100 different directions, which is what a lot of companies usually feel like, candidly. And I think that's usually the first sign that the company's not going to succeed. Yeah. So, it's fun to see everyone work on the same goal, I think.
That's really funny because that actually reminds me of what you were talking just about in terms of the mission of your business. It's like the company itself that you have built.
Yes.
Is its own tight-knit community that's doing stuff in person? Are you working in the office?
Fully in person in Soho, yeah.
Interesting.
And I think that's very important, right? You can't run an IRL business if you're not IRL.
Yeah. Amazing. I'm curious. I've actually asked a number of my guests this. Is there an aspect, a detail that in particular you obsess over in building Posh? Because there's so many facets to, I think, growing and leading a company. And I think that there's a lot, maybe most of it, that the consumer doesn't see that happens behind the scenes. So is there a specific area or specific detail that you feel like you obsess over?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the one, right? It's like everything.
Yeah.
I think it really does come down to like the user experience. And obviously that sounds kind of cliche because what, especially consumer software founder doesn't like obsess over like the user experience. But it is true that like, I really, really do think that the simplest flows is that's a lot of what the company overall is working on.
Yeah.
But specifically me and also my co-founder Eli have been really, really obsessing over like the simple flows that everyone experiences.
Yeah.
I think for the first few years, there was a lot of like, we want to add just as much functionality to this experience as possible so that we can always tell everyone like, we have more features than our competitors, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously that's extremely valuable. If you can do more, then that's super helpful for these businesses, right? You can save them more money, help them, automate their workflows, et cetera. But if the core flows, which 90% of people that aren't, power users are experiencing, aren't getting iterated on, or the same flow that was there 2-3 years ago when design principles, et cetera, have evolved, then overall you actually might lose out on retention, right, and growth, because that 90% of the user base won't even become power users because they're just fed up with something. What I'm getting at is like something as simple as like creating an event or checking out, right? Or, opening the app and onboarding. Like the really simple things that everyone experiences, you sometimes forget about those when you're trying to build for the multi-million-dollar festival that's used you for 2 or 3 years, right? Because you want to show those people respect. So I think right now it's been really fun too, just hyper fixating on like conversion funnels and like top of funnel screens and trying to optimize those experiences.
Cool. So that means that I can post an event and it's super easy because I go and I can use the interface and it's either paid or unpaid.
Yep.
And that opens up the floodgates, and then you can add on the functionality of the more complex features later on.
Exactly. And even simple things like that. Right now we have like a branch where you click, is this a paid or a free event?
Yeah.
But like there's little things you can do, for example, where you can actually put that in the experience so you skip a page, and depending on certain aspects of the event, you can make it so they can quickly choose free or paid on the same page they're adding everything else rather than having it on a separate screen.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you are serving with these very valuable tools event creators, event producers, event planners, and then on the other hand, you are serving anyone who is curious or excited to go to an event.
Yes.
So let's talk about the event producers first. What is a feature that you didn't expect that is very important to them?
That's a great question. Well, there's one that we recently released that Eli actually like vibe coded in like 2 days, which is really funny. Like all these AI tools are allowing you to like ship things super fast right now, right? But basically he like dreamed up this idea of an expense management feature with a couple other team members. And the idea is basically like organizers right now process all their revenue through Posh. Then they have to like go and like create a Google sheet to understand like the health of their business and the P&L. But a lot of them aren't necessarily that financially literate. And so Eli built a simple solution where you can add all your expenses and categorize them. And then we map that to your revenue. And then we export you a Posh formatted P&L to show you exactly like what the profit or loss of your event was.
Wow.
And candidly, like we thought, oh, this might be cool. Like, we'll see what happens to it. It was pretty simple to build. And like a week or two of it being dropped, people have tracked over $1 million expenses, which then opens up the idea of like, people obviously using this a ton to track what they're spending on. And it's like easy for them to understand the health of the business. But also now we get a bunch of data and insight into like, what are people spending money on and how can we create solutions that help them interact with those stakeholders better, right? So it's one of those features where it's like a feature that leads to like a whole swath of other features that are potentially possible. Yeah.
There are more legacy players in the space that must be nervous about what you have built. Do you see them copycatting, or are they just unable to be as innovative in ways that feel obvious when you build them? But these like this interface, this simplicity, this feature set is just unavailable in a lot of the competitor.
Yeah, it's the classic startup issue, right? Where like the bigger a company gets, the slower it moves, right? I think like a lot of these products, I think we actually see a lot more like copycatting on the longer tail, meaning like the competitors in the space that are smaller than us and that are up and coming and that have been incepted after Posh, like we're like 5, almost 6 years old. Maybe they're 3 years old, right? And it's so clear that they were born out of seeing us in the early days and like wanted, and they were inspired. Maybe they thought they could do it a little differently. And now it's gotten to the blatant point where like people will copy some of our features like pixel for pixel and like the copy's the same, like the UI is like the same, the flow is the same. But I think it's only because they can move quick enough to do that, where like the bigger incumbents, there's been a few features that we've seen on a few different platforms that definitely were like a rip from us, but it took them so long that they just can't keep up, right? It comes like 6 months after we deployed it or something. And it might be like one micro feature. So yeah, I think that's something that we try to keep in mind is like, how do we make sure we don't become them, right? Where like we continually move slower. And a lot of it just comes down, especially AI, right, is allowing people to kind of push against the grain on like scaling, equaling, moving slower. And you can reduce headcount and all the other things, which is great, which just saves costs, reallocate resources. But yeah, I think in general, the biggest thing is just like, if you stay nimble and you stay closer to the customer, right? And you actually talk to these people, you'll see what they want and you'll move it faster. It's not like we have some like obvious inkling, kind of like you were getting at right around like, oh, it seems obvious to us. Well, it's like, it's only obvious to us because we're more tapped into the culture and to the people that are using these products than these companies are, right? I'm personally talking to users every day. The CEO of Eventbrite or these other competitors probably is not, is in a dorm room. I mean, not a dorm room, a boardroom, right? Doing whatever they're doing and doesn't even actually know what the product team is experiencing, right? Or hearing about. So I think it's just really being close to the problems.
This is not teeing you up for a marketing pitch, but I am curious. So then just for people who don't know, like why should they use Posh if they want to throw an event?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's such a large like feature set that it depends on who you are and what your purpose is. But I think the true like fundamental difference is that Posh is about who's going, right? Like the entire kind of feeling and vibe of this product is like, who's going to this event? Who do I know, right? How do I connect on a deeper level with the people that I might not know but want to know? Who's similar to me at this event that I should know, right? While a lot of other products are about who's the organizer or who's the artist is more primarily what's happening, right? And so we have a lot of events that are not even artist-driven shows. We definitely love to empower an artist-driven organizers, but we also have this whole other side of the business that we're really focusing on now outside of nightlife, right? So it might be paint and sips or yoga classes or museums, activities, like whatever your mind can think of, right? Just experiences where what really matters is who's in the room and you're going to connect on a deeper level with other people like you. And if the event's purpose is that, it usually is more successful on Posh, right?
That's fascinating. So on that note, I know that you can sync your contacts and see who among your contacts is going to certain events. You show up to the event because you see, all right, 100 people I know have RSVP'd or 5 people I know. How does that translate into more social connection? Because when I show up at a party, I guess there are the people that I obviously recognize, but is there some further facilitation that happens, do you think? Or is it just kind of like you're increasing the probability of the balls like hitting each other?
So the whole idea is like, I'm sure you could relate to this, like you go to a party or an event usually like because you want to meet new people, right? But also there's a second value add of like connecting more deeply with the people that you already know. But I think that the former is not possible without the latter, in terms of like, you're not going to really be able to, I mean, who knows, right? Some of us are extremely outgoing. Most people I speak to, and I'll just speak from my own experience, like I am not probably going to meet as many people at an event if I don't know someone who's a node to introduce me to other people, right? And so the whole thesis of this is like, we want to show you where your friends are going because they probably have other friends that they know that are going that are not you, that they can introduce you to there. And that obviously creates that feeling of belonging, right? I go to a room where I know one person, but I know that other people in the room are probably like that person, right? And then you have different vibes, right? Because as you scroll through the feed, you might see your one friend group going here, your other friend group going there. And then depending on the mood you're in and the type of people you want to interact with, type of people you want to build more relationships with. You can decide, which group of people you want to go enjoy the day or night with.
Yeah. Are you seeing that happen? Are you hearing from people who are attending the events, hoping that happens, that's actually happening?
I mean, I don't talk to consumers as much. I will say
Yeah.
that's a big weakness of mine. I've been talking more to organizers because
Yeah.
just laws of scale, right? If I
Yeah.
talk to someone who's an organizer, they have 100,000 consumers in their network. That's a lot more high leverage for me, but I do need to talk to more consumers. Yes.
So interesting. I mean, it makes logical sense that would
Yeah.
that would be the case. So actually on the topic of people come to the app or the website and are scrolling through the events, what advice would you give to event planners that you're finding like resonates with the event goers, just to make sure that you're optimizing for either visibility or well, actually the two parts, visibility on the platform, and then also actually delivering an event where the party goers or the event goers are like, oh, that was so good.
Yeah, that we have a lot of insight into. I think for the former, in terms of visibility on the app, actually as of today, we just dropped an update where you can upload videos to the feed. So instead of a flyer in the feed, like a 9:16 video comes up instead, which is obviously just so much more engaging because a flyer usually doesn't have like a picture of the venue or like what is going on. But these videos can be so engaging. And this came through us just looking at our traffic attribution and realizing that 80% of our traffic comes from Instagram, right? And so much event promotion happens through Instagram stories, and people usually are finding things to do on the consumer side through their Instagram stories, right? And so if we can replace that middle layer and just have people scroll on Posh, right, that would obviously A, drive our conversions, B, lower, like diminish one step of the funnel, et cetera. But the way to do that is by understanding what's the content they are consuming that they actually appreciate about these events on Instagram and putting that content on Posh, which was videos. And we realized a lot of these organizers already have a story video that they're creating. So why not just reallocate that to Posh as well? So that's already, we ran a test of this a few weeks ago. It converted at a higher rate than the flyers. And then now we shipped it site-wide today.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. IRL, I think, like how to actually create a unique experience. I think it all comes down to like a few things, which is like the location, the people, and the atmosphere, right? Yeah. And I think like the location is like has to be unique. I think no one wants to go to like the venue that everyone's been to, and no one wants to go to the same venue too many times, right? Like for me, I never want to go to the same venue 2 weekends in a row, for example. But I'll want to come back maybe in a few months or whatever. But even more so, like I obviously get invited to a lot of events being on the platform, et cetera. Like usually when I'm excited about an experience, it's because it's like truly a unique space. So like a good example of this would be like, we actually host some of our own events for our like top consumers. We'll host like these kind of intimate gatherings that we host that we try to really make unique. And a few weeks ago, we booked out this boy band, Whatmore, who's been doing really well on like TikTok and things, really, really popular among our demographic. And then we rented out a diner. And we took out everything in the diner. We put an open bar in there and had the chef stay and cook like hot dogs and burgers and fries and stuff. And then the boy band performed in the middle of the diner. Cool. We basically invited like a bunch of like the top, most retentive Posh attendees in New York City to come to this curated experience. We also get content out of it, et cetera, right? And it's kind of very holistic. But the idea here is like, this is not something that like these guys were literally performing on tabletops. It was very, very unique. And I think everyone walked away, right? Everyone's phone was out, which I don't really like. But the point is like they thought it was a unique experience. The atmosphere is the second thing, which kind of plays off of that, right? It's like a unique space, but also the atmosphere is very engaging. People are dancing on tables. There's a chef there. There's an open bar in a diner with like top shelf alcohol, right? Like these things like don't make sense almost to where like the atmosphere was very unique. And then obviously the people there, I think like for that one, it is more just us inviting the top grossing attendees, but these community builders that use our platform, like making sure that everyone there is similar in some sense, whether it's demographic interests, even down to like socioeconomic status. I think these things really are important because if people come into a room, start talking to the people, what if like you put yourself out there and you actually start talking to someone and that one or two first conversations you have, you don't really connect with them, you're probably going to leave relatively soon, right? And so making sure that people like that you think as the host, most of the people in this room would enjoy talking to each other will create like a very, very retentive audience that will want to come to the next one.
Yeah. So cool. This is more a personal question, but for you going to events like this more often, are you flexing more as an extrovert? Like, is it making you the much more social version of you than that you weren't necessarily when you were a kid? And for people out there who are struggling to show up to an event because maybe like the friend that they were supposed to go with flaked on them last minute, like in the dynamics of these events, having like more and more exposure to them, any suggestions on like how to have more fun?
Yeah. It's tough. I will preface, like, I see a lot of these events. I get invited a lot. Do I go to a lot? Like, not as much. I think I still am like the relatively reclusive person who really enjoys going to an event when I'm DJing because like I can enjoy the experience and procure that environment without having to put myself out there. But I do think like the number one piece of advice I would give is like it is like I have to give this advice to myself, which is funny. I think a lot of people, this is a kind of side note, but I think a lot of people give advice that they really like need themselves more than anything. But it really is like, I think it is just like you gotta like drop the act and like be yourself, right? Be more vulnerable and just go up and talk to someone. Because once you talk to the first person, then like it's like, all right, that's not that hard. And then you go to the next person. But yeah, I think also there's a level of like burnout that I've personally experienced of like, I've gone to so many things. And also it was like, for me personally, it was work for so long. And it still is sometimes because like I would go to an event and my number one priority is like, who's the organizer? How can I connect with them? Right. And so it was hard to enjoy myself in these experiences. And so I took like a while, like 6 to 8 months. So like really not going to much events at all. Now I'm finally getting back into it because I'm more removed from the direct go to market that I can just go and truly experience it. Or maybe I meet the organizer, but it's more just to talk to them. I'm not really too pressed about selling them. Right. When I was the only person flying around the US trying to sell all these organizers and stuff, it was like, it was so intense. You're working. Right. That I was just like, oh my God, I need to not go to events.
The company has grown so rapidly, and that's clearly a testament to the value proposition and the way that you're leading the company. I am really curious, when you think about success and scale, to you, are they one and the same? Like, how are you? What makes you the proudest of the growth of Posh so far?
It's a great question. I think it is kind of like a vanity metric, but I think it's like the GMV or like the volume because it states how much we've helped these organizers and creators make, right? And so we just actually crossed $200 million in GMV.
Crazy.
Which
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Well, a billion's on the mind, so congrats what we do then, but one step closer. But I think like that's obviously super exciting because that means we helped people make $200 million bringing people together, right? And that's not our revenue. Like I don't care about our revenue. I care about how much did I help you for wanting to do good in the world and bring people who are similar together. And so I think that's an easy metric to understand like our impact in the world. Not necessarily the number of events, not necessarily the number of attendees, but like how many dollars are people paying to these organizations because they're actually providing a good product, right? And their events are truly high quality, nice experiences, or else people wouldn't be spending money on them. I think that's also what just keeps a lot of us going as well.
You have raised over $30 million in fundraising. Congratulations on that as well. Thanks. So clearly other people also are very excited for what you've built. And one of your investors, Goodwater Capital, prides themselves in changing the world for good. Do you see a tension in working with investors? And I ask this just because I have had guests on, for example, that have chosen not to take any investor money because they want to grow more slowly and perhaps stay just true to their personal kind of goals. Has that been a balance that you needed to find, or did you do the research ahead of time to find the investors who synced up with you?
Yeah, I mean, you can. That's anyone who says like they research investors and like picked the people they wanted to. That's just a fallacy, right? Like ultimately, like how fundraising actually works is like, you know, you're having coffee chats. You probably should not be reaching out to people. You should be letting them reach out to you. You're building demand. You have an investor update that you're sending out to prospective people. Someone gets excited. They preempt your next round if you don't need, money. This is obviously like best case scenario. Worst case scenario is like, no, I'm going to be out of money in 3 months. I need someone to like, you need to go cold email people. Best case scenario is you have runway. You're building those relationships early. Someone preempts you. You know, a bird in the hand. Whether or not you like that person, that's the best person. Like, you use that to try to, drum up other term sheets from other people that you've been talking to and stir up demand. And then you hopefully ideally get something that was, the best offer that you're excited about. And at that point, once you have like all the term sheets in hand, you're not supposed to really like negotiate these or talk about the terms with other investors too. So you can't say like, oh, I got these terms from this person. What can you give? You kind of have to be like, I have terms from someone. What's your best offer?
Yeah.
And then once you do that, you have about a week from like the first term sheet till when you have to make a decision, because they're going to get pissed. They're going to know you're shopping.
Yeah.
Right. So you can say, I need a week just to like talk about it, with my lawyers and my co-founder and stuff. But after about a week, you got to make a decision. Right.
Yeah.
And so after about a week, you have maybe 3, 4, 5 term sheets if you're lucky, maybe more, who knows. And then you have to decide who you like out of those people. Right. But ultimately, it's not like you can just go scan the world for exactly who's the perfect person that lines up with you.
Yeah.
I think answering your question more directly, though, like about like tensions, like, yeah, there always will be tensions, just like there's tensions between me and my co-founder, my employees, my investors, my mom and dad. Right. No matter what, like there is tension with people that you work closely with. I think it's about how you manage that tension. That's important. And understanding that like, they do have their own incentives, investors, right, that are not yours. But so do your employees. But it's about coming to a middle ground of where do my incentives, my employees, and my investors align, and really, really trying to extrapolate the value from each of those groups in a way that makes sure that all of their different incentives are serviced through like the same actions. Meaning like those 2 to 3 company objectives I'm talking about service our investors and our team and me. Right. And the company's needs. Right. And so it's just adding more decision makers and stakeholders and incentives to the ecosystem that you have to optimize what you're doing for. Right. Where if you're by yourself, right, maybe you have a couple employees, you have less incentives, you can kind of do more of what you want rather than trying to do what, everyone, what's the fair middle ground that everyone wants.
Yeah.
Which can, yes, detour where you want to take the company, et cetera. I think for us, like the simple answer is we want to build a breakout, $100 billion plus company that truly makes like a global impact. And the only way, in my opinion, to do that, at least on like a 10, 15, 20 year timeline, is with venture capital. Right. It's very hard to build these like, there's actually, I don't know if there are any $100 billion businesses that are not venture capital backed, maybe like oil businesses, right? Or like 100-year-old businesses. And so like whether or not I like the increased tensions or things or incentives that I have to service from other people, like the only way to make the impact that I'm truly passionate about making is through these venture capital dollars. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of that future world where you're transacting many, many more hundreds of million dollars on the platform, paint me a picture of what the ecosystem looks like. Do you have kind of like wild and crazy visions of like a future feature that feels like like a sci-fi thing, or just like just a fast forward and like, is there something that you wished existed on the platform that just is not in the roadmap for 2025?
That's a great question. I think I have this, me and Eli both have had this vision for a very long time of like, what if you could empower anyone to be a creator and make money hosting IRL events? But I think like very quickly that vision breaks down in the near term, but it's still something we're very excited about in the long term because of the complexity of hosting an event, right? And so when you think about like creator platforms like an OnlyFans or a Fanfix or whatever they might be, right? Like it's very easy to make content and get paid for it. Like you literally just need a phone and a camera. But to create what we call like IRL content, which is like an event or an experience, it's not as simple, right? And so platforms like an OnlyFans or Patreon, whatever it might be, can explode really quickly and empower literally me or you. Like, could monetize this podcast on Patreon really quickly, right? But for an event, you need A, hundreds of customers, if not thousands. B, you need like a space that services them, right? You need production. You need a unique experience, like I was saying, unique atmosphere, DJs, photographer, whatever it might be. You need so many different stakeholders and resources involved. It's relatively difficult for like the average consumer to like host an event that's not like at their apartment or their house, right? Like a legit event you can sell tickets and monetize for. And so, answering your question, it's like, what is the feature set that does empower that? There's, you could make a marketplace of freelancers, of photographers and DJs and venues and things like that. You could create educational content and how-tos and guides, right? You can create a network that maybe collabs two consumers together who have differentiated skill sets that now can be used, maybe a DJ and a photographer like me and Eli, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? The sky is the limit, right? And I think we haven't really ideated enough because there are so many more near-term problems. But the long-term vision really is like if you can create this net new gig economy where anyone can stand up an IRL community and make even a couple $100 a week or month, right? Just congregating maybe even 20 people for a weekly dinner party, right? But you give them that playbook and those tools, resources, and the network to stand that business up. I think that'd be really, really exciting.
I mean, yes, please. I'm excited for that because I am hopefully going to host more events, and that sounds like a dream. What makes you nervous these days?
World War III, you know. No, I'm kidding.
Global politics.
Yeah, you know, global.
Yes, totally.
No, I try to, you know, stuff those things down and go to a couple events and DJ. But I don't know. I think more like day to day, it's probably just a matter of like, what do I not know that's going on behind closed doors at like the competitor companies, right? But I think like time and time again, like I continue to be unimpressed by our competitors, and that worry goes away more and more, especially as we scale and the resources we have and like the level of scale, number of users we have is more akin to that of our competitors, right? Obviously, it's very scary when you have, you know, 10,000 users and Eventbrite has 90 million they boast, right? And all this capital and stuff. It's like, how in the world am I going to beat this company? Now we have like 5 million, right? And like they're burning a lot of cash. The public markets are destroying them. Like now things feel a little bit more even, right? And so I think like those questions and fears of like, is Eventbrite going to decide one day to like scrape my whole site and just destroy my company? That was like truly a very, very real fear for the first like 2 years of the company. And I had gotten advice that like they have done that to companies before, right? Where it's like when you encroach on certain, in any space, incumbents' territory, they might just go, we're a marketplace, look at all your users and offer them some money to leave, and then your business is out of business, right? And so that was definitely a worry. It's just like, who's going to like pay all of our users to leave in droves? But I think now it's like the product's too good. We have too many resources. We have, you know, just truly a best-in-class experience that I don't think that's possible. Do
you sense that, because you've used the word community on your website, in talks that you've given, do you feel like that there's a community building within Posh, either on the event creator side or on the event goer side?
Definitely. Obviously on the event goer side, like the consumers that go to these experiences or these communities, right, are trying to come back to meet the same people. But on the organizer side, we actually invest a lot in our own community strategy. We have a 5-person community team. And what their entire prerogative is to build a community of community leaders in markets around the US and, you know, eventually internationally. So for example, today, actually, they're in San Diego. And they got about 200 RSVPs to our mixer that we do. We do about 2 mixers a month in different cities. And we just invite only event organizers, right? You're an event organizer who's legit. You're not like doing a one-off, but like you host, you know, at least monthly experiences. You're trying to take this pretty seriously. We want you to come into a room and meet, not really us, obviously we want to meet you, but we want you to go meet the other people doing what you're doing in your city. Because chances are, before that happy hour that we host, you probably haven't met these people. And just like I said, right, who wouldn't want to meet people that are extremely similar to them, facing the same problems, experiencing the same path of life, right? And so we've been doing this. This has been like by far one of our most successful go-to-market channels of just flying out, getting those 200 people in a room, getting them to meet each other, completely no strings attached, completely free, open bar, unlimited alcohol, right? And what they get out of it is they might have met 1 or 2 people just like them in their market. And now if you think about it, whenever they go talk to that person, right? It's like, oh, how'd you guys meet? Oh, at the Posh mixer, right? And now Posh is coming up whenever they connect, and then eventually they're going to convert.
Yeah, so cool. Do you feel like you found your community at Posh?
Definitely. I say this all the time. My team gets weirded out about how much I hang out with them. And they're like, do you only hang out with me because I work for you? They're like almost insecure about it. I'm like, no, I hang out with you because I truly think that like people that work at this company or invest in this company are the only people in the world that have like taken a chance on me and like dedicated, you know, candidly risk to me and Eli and obviously the company as a whole, but really in me as the CEO, and like that I feel comfortable and like I could be myself around these people because like they've put it all out there on the line, right? They've literally risked whether it's millions of dollars or spending 10, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week at the office working with me and stuff. Like, if you're going to do that, why would I not want to hang out with you? Because obviously you've, you know, shown an immense amount of respect for me rather than some random person. So yeah, I definitely think maybe to an unhealthy level, I have a strong community at Posh.
That is really heartwarming to hear and very impressive. So congratulations. I know that this is an impossible question to ask, but what is one of your favorite experiences that you've seen on the platform, or a standout experience that you've seen?
Yeah, no favorites. I don't play favorites, but I do think a standout I'll give. I think I really enjoyed a few. There's a few that come to mind. I think one shout I'll give is to this brand Drinks First, which has been using us for a very, very long time. They're like basically a dating podcast that built up a large audience and then realized they could monetize the audience by hosting IRL experiences, because they were all single people in New York listening, and they're like, well, they probably all want to meet each other, right? And they did an event at Othership, which is a like sauna steam room kind of vibe.
Haven't checked it out yet, but dying to.
Yes, great spot. And it was cool because I think like I was saying about breaking down the barrier, everyone came in like a swimsuit and stuff, and like it's like hot and sweaty and like candidly not their most attractive, right? Like everyone's like a little bit like just like disconfigured and like it's just weird. But because of that, I think after the first like few minutes, like people like just started talking to each other and enjoying the moment a lot more than like a bar vibe or something. And that goes back to what I was talking about, like unique experience, unique atmosphere, right? Unique location. I think really did make it like a memorable experience. Cool. Another one is like puppy yoga was super cool. I went to that a few weeks ago, and like it's just you just do yoga. And there's like puppies running around. You can adopt them. It's really hard not to adopt them.
Yes. But off platform,
yes.
Is there an event or experience that you've done that really stands out?
I definitely like. I suggest like meditation. It's not really an event necessarily, but I do think it's an experience that I try to at least enact weekly. But I did 75 hard at the beginning of this year, which involved 75 days straight of meditation, working out, sobriety, and drinking a gallon of water, which was fun, and reading. But yeah, meditation's awesome.
What inspired you to do that?
75 hard? I don't know. I think it's just good sometimes to have a reset, right? And like really like go as hard as possible to see like what your limit is, and then you kind of have that in the back of your head of like any experience that you have after that for some set of time is like relatively easy, because you're like, I just put myself through 75 days of like torture, didn't see my friends and do anything. It was also like meanwhile January, February, March, so it was like freezing cold. I'm going on like runs outside, and so now anything I do now in like the summer nice months and I'm like not doing that is like, okay, this is pretty simple. So I think just like putting yourself through physical pain for some period of time is actually very helpful.
Awesome. It's also aligns though, because you had mentioned that you're emphasizing really expanding beyond, say, events that are around drinking culture. So that's great.
For sure.
I'm on the wellness wagon also.
Love it.
So when you're not working, which seems not often, how do you pamper yourself? Like, what do you do for fun now?
What do I do? I think DJing is like my like release, right? Because I did it since I was a kid. My dad's a DJ, and so it kind of did get me out of my shell and stuff. So yeah, I try to DJ like once or twice a month. And obviously, I know all these organizers through Posh, so it's pretty fun.
So when you DJ, does it go on Posh?
Well, I'd hope. I usually kind of like you guilt trip. I'm like, you're not going to book me and not put the event on Posh. Like that's kind of
okay. Where can we find you and follow you on your journey?
Anywhere. I mean, just look me up. I think Instagram, I post DJ gigs if you want to come play and hang out and DJ.
Okay, tell us your handle.
Avante official. Nice. And then obviously just posh.vip. Go find an experience that would make me super happy.
Cool. Avante, this has been a very fun conversation. I feel like social media gets accused of breeding loneliness and anxiety and a host of challenges, and you have really created this platform that gets people off their phones, and that's really doing like tangible things to connect people, to build community, to foster meaningful in-person relationships, which is all about, to the earlier quote that you said, creating a sense of belonging, which I think is like so profoundly important and valuable, and something that personally resonates with me so deeply. So huge congrats on the growth, and thanks for building Posh.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoy this conversation, and let's stay connected, so subscribe for updates.